Hello, welcome. We have made it to the American River, as you can see back there. There are raptors floating by our rapids here, and seeing the beautiful ocean. I mean, the river here down in Northern California. It's a beautiful day, and we welcome you all to our inaugural broadcast. I hope and pray that each of you are doing well. I'm going to be sharing my story here shortly, and this is something that happened to me quite recently, in maybe about 6 months ago now. And I finally decided I'm going to use this platform to bring out what's been going on, since we've had a lot of people ask how I'm doing. So I just want to thank everyone for their prayers and for all the wonderful support. And I know that this is something that was God ordained, even though people around the world were shocked and frightened for me. But I know that there was a purpose in all this. So, what I wanted to go ahead and begin with a little word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you again for creating me and creating every person here on this earth to be a vessel for you. And we know that times are hard in each of our lives, but through these trials, your glory can shine through. And this is the purpose of my sharing the story today. And may each that listen and watch will be blessed and take something away that they can implement into their lives as well. I pray in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Messiah, Mashiach, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Right. So this is the time of December, early in the month, when everyone was out and about trying to get ready for the holidays. And I was on a little electric scooter. I don't know if you've seen them around, but they're quite popular these days. And I was going to pick up some walking sticks for my mother at the sporting goods store. And I was in the bike lane going along. I was just being real careful because it was cloudy and overcast. But suddenly a big truck, a Dodge Ram, cut right in front of me, and I had no chance or opportunity to stop. And so I slammed my brakes as quick as I could, but I fell off the scooter. I slid, and as I was sliding, I could see the tire just come straight over me, and he ran right over my chest and my pelvis area. I couldn't even believe it was happening, but I saw a horrified woman's look as she saw the truck go over me, and people were screaming, and the driver actually came out, and he came to my side, and he was telling me, "Don't move, don't move." I was screaming and saying, "Help me, help me." I knew things were broken inside. I just didn't know how bad, but they were definitely being things that were not in place. And as I was just screaming, someone was trying to call on their cell phone, and she's just like, "Oh, it's not going, it's not going." We could just feel this tension in the air. And finally, she got through, and she was able to tell the people where we were at, and an ambulance came, and I could feel the kind hands come and put the uh, collar around my neck and inflate it around my spine, and they were cutting off my clothes, cutting off the backpack, so that they could get me into the ambulance. And fortunately, the hospital was literally just down the street, and I was rushed to the ER, and I was questioned by the police, and I reported that I had actually been run over by the truck, which was surprising to the officer. And they said, "Did you have a helmet on?" And I said, "Yes." "And was it fastened?" "Yes." And I asked a little bit with some reservation, "So how was the driver?" And he told me, "Oh, the driver cooperated with us fully." And that lifted my burden. And I asked the police to please contact my husband and tell him what happened. Uh, After a while, the hospital there said, "We cannot treat this type of injury, and we want to transfer you over to the major medical facility in UC Davis that has specialized care." So I was taken in the ambulance and trucked off for another hour and a half through the rain into the area of another ER, and the ambulance driver there had shared that this hospital was a teaching hospital, and to be prepared for lots of residents and people to be looking at every orifice and every corner of my being. And that's exactly what happened. There were people at my feet, there were people at my head, and they're all asking me, "Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here?" And finally, I think it was the chief resident. He was like, "Okay, we're going to have to roll you." And they rolled me, and that was when I felt this excruciating pain in my pelvis. I knew something was really wrong there. And he kept feeling along each vertebrae. "Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here?" I kept saying, "No, no, just my pelvis, my pelvis." And so finally they rolled me back, and I breathed a sigh of relief. But then they came up like, someone asked me, "Are you allergic to any drugs?" And I told them, "I really don't want any narcotics." And they were like, "What? Uh, you have a lot of broken bones." I understand that, but I had a previous accident maybe 25 years ago where I was going up the hill and my tire hit a rock and it blew out my front tire, and it flipped me upside down, and I pretty much landed straight on my spine, crushed my spine, and I was trucked off to the ER at that point. So I was about 24, 25 years old, and this is when they gave me Demerol. And at that point, as I took the Demerol, I threw up right away, and I was so much more in pain from having that injected in my spine than when I was even thinking about any pain from that. And later, as I was in the ICU, nurses would always ask me, "Are you in pain? Are you in pain?" And I was like, "Well, I think I am, because I was in a very bad car accident." And they would just be squirting stuff up into my IV, morphine or whatnot, and it just threw me for a loop. I was not myself for the next year or so, and I knew that those narcotics had this very detrimental effect, and they did nothing for my healing. So I was adamant that I did not want those narcotics. And so there at UC Davis, I told them up front, and I could see the shocked looks on the residents' faces. And she's like, "She doesn't want anything." So I was given maybe some over-the-counter Tylenol and Celebrex, which really didn't do anything. And after being in the ER for almost 3 days, because there wasn't a bed available, we had to just tough it out there. My husband got to be involved with some very interesting encounters. He saw a prisoner come up, handcuffed and all beaten up, all black and blue and unconscious. But later he came to, and there were a couple of probation officers on either side, or uh, prison officers, and they asked if they could. He asked if he could actually share some truth-filled material for the prisoner. And they said, "Are you Catholic?" And they said, "No, I'm a Protestant." And he said, "What is it?" And so he showed the officers the material, and they looked through it, and they were like, "Okay, you can give it to them." And so here's this beaten up prisoner. I don't know what happened, but he went up to him and gave him these tracts, and the guy looked through them. "Thanks, bro," and gave him a affirmative that he enjoyed it. So this was the start of our reactions and witnessing that we were doing straight off the bat. You know, as soon as my husband came up to me in the ER, all I could say was like, all things work together for good. That's all I could think of to say. And I know every night there I was in the ER, all I could just keep praying was like, "Lord, please help me, Lord," because I didn't know what my outcome would be. Luckily, as they did the ultrasound, there was no internal bleeding, which was quite a relief for us. I did have a pneumothorax. I did, and in the beginning they said I had about 12 broken ribs. Eventually, that went up to 18 broken ribs after they kept looking at the imaging and seeing more and more breaks. I was like, 18? I didn't know I had that many to break. But yeah, that's what was happening as I was finding myself with more and more parts of my body broken. That I asked, what can they do about this? And they said, can I have like a wrap, a brace of some sort? And they said, no, we don't do that. If we give you a wrap or a brace, then you won't breathe and you'll get pneumonia and you'll die. So you pretty much have to tough it out. But we can, as you're going under surgery, a nerve block. Would you like that? And I said, no, that's all right. I will work through this with the Lord's help without doing all these narcotics. Um, so one thing that they did do in the ER was a traction, which was when I was putting people on traction, it was like putting their leg in a little sling and raising it up, and things were all very gentle and outside the joint. But these days they drilled a hole in my femur, and I could just hear the zzz going on with a little bit of lidocaine just to numb it up. But it's like 10 times worse than any dental appointment. But this drill, for some reason or another, the orthopedic resident wasn't able to get the bar through my femur, and so she had to take the pin of the bar out, and she had to redo it, and I could just feel this zzz going all the way through my bone here, so that it would help to put a little traction on my pelvis and give me a little relief, and keep me from moving too much. And I think that was the worst part, was just seeing my bone with this bar sticking right through it, and this whole thing in a 15 kilogram weight at the end of the bed just pulling on my leg for hours and hours. That was a very traumatic experience for myself, just going through that. But the worst part of it, I think, was I didn't have a bowel movement for 3 days. And by the third day, I was still in the ER and I was asking the nurse, oh, is there some kind of laxative that they could give me? So there was milk of magnesia and things, but I actually just said, you know what? I just need some prune juice. So they brought um, cups and cups of prune juice. And after about the third prune juice, boy, everything started to really run. I didn't even need the milk of mag. I didn't need any of the other types of laxatives. And I was like, wow, chalk one up for good old prune juice that the Lord created. That was my first natural remedy, I could say, that did the job. And so eventually I did make it up to ICU, and I was being turned every 2 hours. That's what they do. So you don't get a decubitus ulcer or do anything to make sure that my skin wouldn't break down. But I've been a very active person, but the act of rolling was one of the worst because my pelvis was already displaced, and here they're trying to roll me onto this, and I could feel this clunking going on. It was a horrible experience, and I was just thinking, is this really necessary? Do we really have to do this? Um, and so the ICU nurse was really kind to me, and she was like, we'll see if we can get you down to the floor as soon as we can, so that you don't have to go through this. They have this lift team that actually comes and lifts and rolls, and he was like, oh, she's going through a lot of pain. He was telling the nurse, and she's like, I know. But I still felt I couldn't risk losing my mind over taking the pain. And I was just praying that I could get into surgery. But unfortunately, all the pelvic surgeons were on Christmas break or holiday break, or something was happening that they could not get me into surgery. So I went down to the fourth floor, and my husband was able to come and spend the night after sleeping on the ER floor for a couple nights. He finally went to a friend's a friend's house, and he was very kind, being my nurse assistant and doing the things that I know. In sickness and in health, he fulfilled that vow. I can honestly say he did the things that I know that normal people wouldn't want to do. But I was so grateful because as he was going to our friend's house, I said, please, if you can get some of those comfrey salves that we knew this ministry would make, it's called City Exodus, and they make these little salves made from different plants and cayenne pepper. And I said, if they have anything, please get it for me, because I knew if I could get some comfrey on there, I could at least get it to a manageable level, these pains. And I was praying because I knew that ministry had just visited the church where my friends go to, and they had brought a lot of these salves with them. And lo and behold, the next day he came and he brought this little green, oh shoot, I should have brought it with me, but this little green container and a little red one with cayenne pepper in it. And it has a lot of little other plants, and I just started to rub onto my ribs this salve, and I was praying, please God, I've got to have some relief. Anytime I felt a twinge, I would just put it on there. And I think the Lord knew that I have always felt somehow I wanted to get this message out that He can work through natural ways. Because when He does that, He gets the glory. He's the ultimate healer and not some fancy chemical concoction. And so when I was doing this, I just said, Lord, please help me. Help this salve. And amazingly, these pains started to go away. And I even put it on my scapula, which is back here, that was crushed as well. And in the beginning, I could barely move my arm. I couldn't even go like this because it was so hard to see my scapula being able to go up and down. There was just so when I saw the x-ray, it was just like a bunch of little pebbles down at the bottom of my scapula. And I was thinking, am I ever going to be able to raise my arm? But look, it's amazing. Within days, a day or so of rubbing back there, I felt like, wow, I can actually move my arm again. And after that, we had people praying for us all over the world. And we also had people who were learning of various ways to make pain teas. And Dr. Chung drove 2.5 hours just to bring me a pain tea. And he put some various things in it, like dogwood and other turmerics and anti-inflammatories. And he anointed me as an elder, and they prayed over me and his wife, brought the DMSO. DMSO is like a natural pain reliever as well that helps to pull in the comfrey oils and other oils. And so she prayed and put that on my spine, and then rubbed the oil on top of that. And they also used olive oil to anoint me and my spine. And that night, I slept so well. It was the night before my surgery, I believe. And this was the beginning of something really supernatural. And this is when we also had another friend who is a pastor over the phone anoint me as well. And the next day, I felt like there was like this burden that was just totally lifted from me. I can't explain it, but when I see my x-rays and how many spots along my back, all these bones were just like crushed, and my scapula, and then of course my pelvis, I was like, this is amazing that I am not feeling the pains that I did the previous day. So then I was scheduled for surgery. I went into surgery, and I asked them, please, I do not want any narcotics after surgery. And they still couldn't believe it. And the guy goes, we give this out like candy. Are you sure you don't want something? And I said, no, you can put them as a standing order, but I'm not going to take it. So I was taken into surgery. I was so blessed that there was a pelvic surgeon that happened to come from another hospital, and he had done a specialty fellowship in pelvic surgeries of all things in Switzerland. So he had very up to date techniques where he would do it very minimally invasively, which was so uh, relieving for me that there wasn't much blood loss. I didn't need to worry about blood transfusions or that type of thing. And he was putting 2 rods in the back of my pelvis and then a plate and to realign my pubic symphysis up here. It was quite a harrowing experience, but coming out of it, we had people that started to visit us that I hadn't seen for years, and it was just such a blessing that friends and family would just come. Even someone from Japan that we had known, a church member that lived in LA, had come to Japan because he was from that area, and he happened to live right near UC Davis. And so he showed up right as I was recovering in surgery, and they were able to talk to me through as I was being rolled back to my room. It was just, those are the types of things that I felt were the most powerful. In of course, addition to the natural things. So I'd be drinking my pain tea in the morning, rubbing and the salves all over my pelvis, my as far as I could reach in my back, and then day after day, uh, the next day I was had my first session with physical therapy, and they had told me up front, the doctor said you can't put weight on your right arm, and that was such a devastating blow to me because I was that's the only way that I was going to be able to uh, push off a walker or crutches or anything. Is I got to be able to put weight here because I'm totally almost non-weight bearing, toe touch weight bearing on my leg, and there's just no way that I could just hop around without having to put some weight on this arm. So I fought and I said, but the doctor said, this would heal on its own, and it's non-displaced. Please go back and see if there's some way I can put weight on this arm. So that first day I got up into the wheelchair, and I was just rolling around in the hallways with one arm, and he must have really saw my dejected look, because he said, you know what, I'll go and I'll try and ask the doctor. And so the next morning he comes back and he says, good news, the doctor says that you can put weight on your arm. So this time around, they got the walker out, and I was able to stand and push through my arms and hop around and even go up and down a few stairs so that I could make it home. Because they were thinking of sending me to a skilled nursing facility, and because my home is not wheelchair friendly or anything. And I was just like, praise God. And you know what was the most interesting thing? At the end of the session, it was almost like an afterthought. He said, oh, how's your pain level? And I said, you know what? I don't even really have pain. I can't say that I have pain. And he was just like shaking his head like, are you serious? You cannot be serious that you did all this and you didn't have pain. That's what his look told me. So I praise God again. This is nothing that I did. Oh, I have to mention when I first came down to the floor, I had a pneumothorax. So I was still coughing up phlegm and things that pneumothorax means that you have a punctured lung from one of the ribs. And I imagine it was right around here because that's where I could feel the congestion there. And my roommate there in has said to the nurse as she heard me cough, "Can I please be moved? Because I don't want to catch any bug or virus from her." And in the morning, she finally got the nerve to ask me what happened. But before that, uh, I said, I need to take things into my own matters into my own hands. And I asked the nurse for hot pack and bags of ice. So I had the hot pack on my chest. It was one of those things that you just break open this pack and it becomes hot. And then I just reversed it with a bag of ice and doing my own hydrotherapy there, right there in the floor, in the bed of the hospital. And lo and behold, it just cleared it out without coughing it or anything. And by morning, I felt like I didn't have anything in there. And she finally had the guts to ask me what happened. I said, "Oh, I was run over by a truck and I have 18 broken ribs." And she's, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then she's like, "I'm going to call my prayer partners. Is that okay?" And so immediately she calls this prayer line and they start saying, "Oh, okay, yes, we will put her on our prayer list." And what this is, it's like an app that goes to a whole church network throughout the world. And all these people are praying. And of course, my husband had put it out on Facebook. And so people were praying for me around the world as well. But it's just like amazing how the prayers just went out like streams of light everywhere. And I think the Lord does that because He doesn't want to have one prayer be superimposed on everyone. He wants everybody to come together so that no one prayer gets the credit. It's everybody's prayers together that creates the power that helps the arm of the Lord move in people's lives. And that's what happened to me. I had people praying for me, and we were able to get through the surgery. We were able to get up and about. And by Friday, the following week, I was already on my way home. And my friend who's a PA, she actually opened up her basement so that I could go in and out of the bathroom without having to go up and down the flight of stairs. And I think that really saved me as well. She's also plant-based and dietitian and a PA, so she made lots of good plant-based food for me and my husband. And so I have to credit that it wasn't just the outward things that I did, but it was the Lord helping from the inside out with the proper nutrition and fuel. And she couldn't believe, "Oh, you're already stable enough to come home," and things were going so much better than I ever expected. People would call and say, "I had a broken rib and oh, it hurt for months. I could barely cough. I could barely even talk." And I would tell them, "No, I just don't feel anything here." And I keep thinking, "Oh, someday it's going to just like hit me." But it never did, because as soon as I get a twinge or something, I was actually drinking a pain concoction by that time of natural plants. I was doing all the hydro. I had my fomentation pack, and then getting outside. I think that's one of the biggest things. Even though it was December and cold, whenever the weather would let up, I would hop out through the garage, from the basement through the garage into the driveway and sit out there and just try and soak up whatever ray I could. And that to me, oh, I should also mention, I was asked by the respiratory therapist to always be doing the some kind of little blowing machine to help my pneumothorax. But it was just so counterintuitive because they always want me to blow in. When I worked in pulmonary rehab as a physical therapist, I was always telling people with COPD and various lung issues that they need to breathe in, smell the roses through their nose, and then blow out through the candle. And so when they're telling me to blow in through my mouth, it was just so contrary to what the natural inspiration and what things. So I finally just gave that up and I started singing Christmas carols in the hospital. My roommate went home. She was telling me, "Can I share your story in church?" And I said, "Go ahead, by all means." And she was like so inspired. But since I didn't have a roommate, I was just belting out Christmas carols with Josh Groban, and the doctors and nurses were like, "Oh, it's very good to hear. Keep going, keep at it. This is the season." So I was, "Oh, come all ye faithful." And this is like one of the best respiratory therapy exercises I can recommend for you to give out a really good breath is to sing. And when you're singing, I can actually kind of move to the, the mood of the song, and I feel so inspired. And the endorphins come in. I tell you, I think we are missing a big, huge part of respiratory therapy when we don't have our patients sing. And singing inspirational songs, they're meditating on the music. All these things contribute to healing. And I think a lot of our traditional ways to make things better is being taught by people who have not been patients. And to me, if you want to see what works, what doesn't work, think like a patient and put yourself in their shoes and understand and really try to get into this mode of really focusing on, if I were in this position, what would work best? What is not working? Why are we constantly having bad outcomes? What can we do differently? And I'm a product of what I guess we could say is a counterculture patient, and a patient that didn't go along the natural way of life. And so when we focus on letting God get the credit and letting Him be in charge, I believe that the Lord, in His mercy, is becoming the grand physician and the grand designer of all things that require healing and mercy and love for our broken human body and frailties. So this is in a nutshell what I've been going through. And I think now I'll have my husband come and he'll share a little bit about uh, another aspect of health that I think a lot of us can benefit from.
Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day. It's sunshine, so I will just wear the glasses. Not so. I would like to also start with a prayer to invite God's presence for as well. I'll be sharing how to overcome any addiction in your life if you have any. So, dear Lord, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to come and share my experience and give a few tips for those who are struggling with any addictions, either smoking or drinking alcohol or anything harmful for the body or mind. So I pray to guide my lips as I share. In your name, Jesus, I pray. Amen. Well, a while ago, I've been living in Guam island in Micronesia. It's a tropical island, and in the south, they actually have jungle area when you can really experience the tropical jungle forest. Not quite rainforest, but similar. So, and some path, if you want to make, you have to take a machete and start really cutting the brushes and branches to make the path through the jungle. And that's how it goes. It takes a while, but if you come back the next day, so the same path, it takes a little easier and easier. And sooner or later, there will be made a long and wide and easy path to go through. And that's how it goes with our habits, any habits in life. So when we started, it might take some time, but once we do it daily and become familiar, we have a brain path made. And so it's with any addiction, it goes the same way. Once we realize that we've been doing it for a while, we become addicted and dependent on either substance, like I mentioned, alcohol or smoking. And what we have to do is to realize how to replace this path with a positive habit and healthy lifestyle instead. There are a few steps, and of course, first step, it's the most important to admit it's wrong, it's harmful, and make decision, set the day of breaking through free. And I totally believe in God and His power. That's when inspiration and motivation comes. It's hard to convince a person who doesn't believe in God to quit, because they would probably say, we all die sooner or later, let me have my joy and fun, who cares? But the person who believes in the higher power, in God, there is a hope for sure. So God is faithful and true, and He can set free. So the first step is to admit you've been doing something harmful and wrong, and prepare yourself mentally. All the diseases, many doubts, it's in your mind, it's our mind. So and especially once we addicted, the mind will trick to all kind of excuses, and one of the tricks in mind, it will be maybe later, someday later. And I would say later may never come. So it's better not to do it either slowly and gradually. No, if the dog's tail needs to be cut, you don't cut it in short pieces. You cut it once and for all. So the cold turkey quit is the best. But first, you have to prepare yourself mentally. And how we do it? First, you must believe. That's very important aspect. Faith. We have to have faith. There is a story about losing baseball team. I believe in high school somewhere in Texas. Cotton pickers team was infamous, and they've been ridiculed, made fun of. When the school bus arrives from tournament, they usually lose every time. So the eggs going into their bus. So the team was really struggling, and no one would even think that they ever be any good. But the principal made a good decision. He changed the coach. No more old coach. Let's have another coach. And the new coach put the team in front of him, and he looked at them and said, I see champions. I see in you champions. You can win, not only in your region, you can win and be number one in the entire country. And then two of the athletes start laughing, and he told them, you can go, you don't have to be a part of the team. And they left. And suddenly the rest of the team told the new coach, that was the best two players you let go. And he says, first you must believe. And I see champions in you. And guess what? With the right attitude, he even wrote on the everywhere was a motto, first you must believe. They have t-shirts, first you must believe. And indeed, to make the story short, the cotton pickers made it to finals and start winning and becoming a pride in their community. But the same principle when it comes to addiction, once you realize you are hooked on some substance, and negative thinking could be addictive too, critical thinking and all kind of addictions with caffeine, number one in US, and of course alcohol and smoking. First you must believe and prepare yourself mentally, and then you prepare yourself next step physically. And physically, in order to replace the bad habits, you can replace bad habits with good habits. So start getting up early in the morning and uh, go for a walk. When the urge comes, start drinking water, chewing carrots, and find some, positive, anything you might be interested. Nature walks, gym, exercise, and prepare yourself physically, have more lifestyle changes. You need to sleep better, sleep enough hours, at least 7 to 8 hours to sleep. Taking showers, contrast showers, bringing very good mood, hot and cold. It also can release um, urge. So prepare yourself mentally. First, you must believe. Prepare yourself physically. And I would suggest even change atmosphere in your room. Maybe move the furniture, get rid of junk, clean it. That every time we come home, someone comes home, it will be a reminder. Oh, there was a new life. So, and that's the next step would be prepare yourself socially. It's very important to share with your friends and co-workers, if you're a church member, with your church members, that you have decided to quit this harmful habit. And as you share with your co-workers, it can be reinforcements for you. You don't want to be embarrassed by failure. So you have a public announcement in a way that, well, that's what you're going to do. I'm going to follow it. And you can also ask some prayers partners and accountability, and even some uh, phone numbers when you call when you need urgent prayer and talk when you're going through some. Yes, and it's always a good advice to talk to your primary doctor, physician, what you can do, how much you can do if you have so many health conditions, to do some physical exercise or anything like diabetes or whatever you're going struggle. So it's always ask doctor. And I would highly recommend to change your diet to during your time of quitting. If you eating just plant-based simple meals, it can clear your mind, it can give you better sleep, and of course the blood cleansing blood and detoxing will be a part of your diet. So, and as we eat antioxidants like blueberries and kale and omega-3, flaxseed and chia seeds, and healthy breakfast is very important, more important than lunch and dinner. So the breakfast, so those things seems like a little, but they bring the great results. So once we prepare yourself mentally, first you must believe, and physically, and start exercising, drinking water, sleep well. Socially, you make a public announcement to people that I've been struggling with this kind of habit or substance, and I'm going to quit. Please pray for me and give me all the support, and I can. I'm heading for victory. And the most important is prepare yourself spiritually. I mentioned without God we can do nothing, and without God it's a good chance, guarantee, when the stresses will come into your life, and they will come. The God is real, so his opposition is real. So there will be temptation. Suddenly you will get some free stuff, and another old friends social will come, and somebody's birthday, and good mood, or trials, bad mood. So we need God on our side. So prepare ourselves spiritually, and this is the time to make right with the Lord and pray a prayer of victory. And the wrong prayer is, God, I'm so weak, please help me, I don't think I can do it. That's a wrong prayer. God gave us promises. With God, all things are possible. We can overcome. So the best prayer is, God, I thank you and praise you for the victory you have already given to me. I claim the promise I can do with you all things, and by your grace and by your power, I will be free. And that's once we get connected with the Lord daily, He will give us supernatural things. I've met a wonderful chaplain and a pastor who's been addicted to all kind of drugs and smoking, and he smoked like a like a train, chain smoker. So, and then he made decision to give his life to the Lord, to give and get baptized. And actually he and his girlfriend both decided, well, since tomorrow on Sabbath we will give love publicly, we will give life our lives to the Lord and be immersed in baptism and die and be resurrected anew. So they decided, okay, we will do the last time smoking. They open cigarettes and they smoke and they look in the sky, not yet sundown, lighted another cigarette and smoke. And when the sundown was and Friday night Sabbath ended, they said they took the rest of the cigarettes, threw it away, and the next day when they came to church, pastor invited John to baptism pool, and he asked all the questions. Are you ready, John? Yes. And John, I know that you've been smoking. Have you quit smoking? Yes, sir, I did. When the last time you have smoked? Last night. But what John shared after the baptism, when he came out, he was a new person indeed. He was a new creature in Christ. And when the temptation came, so he told himself, go tempt the old John is dead. He is in the... So pray. And he said, I didn't have to smoke. The urge was disappeared, and he was free, and he never smoked again. Another very important aspect, once we get connected to God and give his life to him, and he will set us free, huge step. The next step will be ask God to give you opportunities to help someone with the same problem. There might be people struggling like you, what you've been going through. And the best thing to reinforce the new life in you, free life, smoking free or addiction free, is to start helping people. You be open to share your experiences, your testimony, the steps with other person. You can even wear a t-shirt. I like to be smoking free. Ask me, what can you do? And so on. So it's once we start teaching, it will be reinforcing us. Yes, claim the promises. Believe you can do it. Prepare yourself mentally and physically and spiritually, and the victory will be yours. I know God helped me with many things in my life, and it's wonderful things to know that even when temptation comes, you don't have to. You have a victory. We can claim victory in our lives. And I have, you can always contact me on my social media if you want to have some in details what you can do, how can you quit. But you can do it because he's done it to many people. And today, the very day, there will be some people around the world who had claimed the victory and overcome and will never smoke or drink or take any substance or any let the addiction run their lives. And God cares about birds. He cares about you. He wants you to be victorious. So, and I like to pray for you right now. One more time. Dear God, I just want to pause one more time to thank you and praise you for the many victories you gave me personally, and also for many victories and glorious moments for those who trusted you and were able to overcome their bad habits and addictions and now free from any substance or any bad habits. I just want to pray for the viewers right now. If anyone is struggling with something, Lord, help them to apply and not to have only head knowledge but practical knowledge and living testimony that your name be glorified. So I pray and claim all the wonderful promises that all things are possible for those who love Him. And the last thing I can tell that if you have faith like the mustard seed, and mustard seeds are so small it can barely fit on your finger. It's literally little seed. So if you have mustard seed faith like mustard seed, you can literally move the mountains in your life. And the last story I want to share, in certain close country in Asia, a pastor had a rare chance to actually give opportunity to one lady who's been an atheist all her life, skeptic, scoffer, unbeliever, totally, to give her chance. And as he was sharing some verse in the Bible, he told this woman, if you have faith like mustard seed, you can move the mountains. And this woman interrupted pastor and came to the window and saw the mountain on the horizon, and she told the mountain, move. And the mountain was still there. She turned to the pastor and told the pastor, you can go now. I don't need any of your preaching and studying. The mountain is still there. I guess I don't have faith, so you can leave now and don't come back. So, and 2 weeks later, pastor receives a call from that woman. Please come to my home. I need more Bible studies because I want to get baptized. I'm ready to give my life to Jesus. So please bring all you need. I want to be ready for baptism. And pastor came and he asked the woman in surprise, what quite a change? What changed your mind? And the woman called the pastor to the window and showed him, look. And pastor looked in the window and he saw the big construction, heavy equipment and bulldozers and excavators are removing the mountain. And he was shocked. What's happening? Well, I guess the government decided to make a highway there, so they're now blowing up this removing the mountain. So and the woman realized that her prayer was answered in a way she didn't expect it. So little grain of mustard seed can be a reminder of little faith can move the mountains in your personal life when you're addicted with something. So feel free to contact me because I can help you all the way with more steps, with more material. I can share. God loves you and He wants you to be victorious, and He can do it for you. Bye bye. Introduce.
Hello, happy Sabbath. I'm Darlene Hall, and I'm with Made Whole Ministry. And I just want to thank Grace and Nick for the invitation to come and join them. As you can see, we're out in nature, just enjoying the Sabbath, the beautiful sunshine. I don't know if you have been able to see the rafters in the background. Yeah, they're having a wonderful time. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I have a similar background. My background is in medicine. Nick and Grace, they are physical therapists. My background is nursing. And I've been a nurse for a very long time, over 35 years, about 35 years. And as a nurse, I have seen a lot. I've worked in every aspect of medicine, ICU, the clinics. I've worked oncology, surgical units. I've worked in surgery. So I've seen a lot. Home health. I have a broad background, and I've worked in many different areas of the country. I did travel nursing, and right now I live out in California. Came out here as a travel nurse, and I also did agency nursing. With agency nursing, you go from hospital to hospital. So I've seen a lot. I've worked in inner city hospitals where you have the poorest of the poor. And I've also worked in some of the, quote unquote, elite hospitals where you have many individuals coming that are wealthy. So I've had a variety of experience with patients from different, socioeconomic of the society. And I've learned a lot since then. People are basically the same. I noticed that when I worked in psychiatry, I was a psychiatric nurse for 7 years and did was a manager in quality with psych for 8 years. So, in working with individuals in psychiatry with mental health issues and working in medicine, patients having cancer, diabetes, heart disease, I noticed a common thread, and that many of my patients talked about trauma, events that happened early in their lives. And as a person who suffered from many medical diseases myself early in life, I could trace back the origins. There's a lot of research out there now that talks about early childhood trauma. In fact, there was a study that started back in um, 1985, and it's called the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. Just to give you a little bit of background about how this came about and what I'm doing now, I focus on emotional health, individuals that have been traumatized, and we have seen a explosion in individuals that are having mental health issues. Well, the research now shows that many of the diseases that people face in life can be traced back to their childhood. The CDC, for going back all the way back to the 1920s, they have been keeping stats on some of the most common diseases, cancer, heart disease. They are, almost neck and neck as far as the number one cause of disease in the United States is heart disease, and cancer is number two. And then we have diabetes, we have Alzheimer's disease, suicides, um, just many different diseases. And so, what research has now uncovered is that 5 of the 10 leading diseases are due to early childhood trauma. Many individuals with heart disease, cancer, diabetes, depression have their origins back in childhood. Now, I have been working with individuals now for about 2 years, trying to get to the root of the problem. And I use a biblical approach, and that is, and it's based on 5 different Bible scriptures in the Bible. The first one is, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And the truth is in Jesus, okay? And then knowing the truth about, what happened early in life. Then many of our issues are housed right here in our heart, our emotions. Bible tells us that it is out of the heart that the issues of life occur. I like to use this analogy of a artichoke. I love artichokes, but it's a lot of work to get to the meat, to get to that tasty part. The artichoke has it's a beautiful, looks like a beautiful flower. But when you have to cut through the thorns, that thick skin, and then, it's inside, there are all of these fibers. And so once you get through all of that, the tender part is right there in the core. And with many individuals, when we have been traumatized, when we have been hurt, we put walls around our hearts, and no one can get in. No one knows the pain that we are going through. And so, like an artichoke or like an onion, we have to peel back the layers to get right to the root to find out, what is the cause. So that's another principle, getting to the root cause. And then I ask people, do you want to be made free? Jesus asked the paralytic. Paralytic was sitting He was lying there. 38 years had been incapacitated. And Jesus walked by and asked the paralytic, "Do you want to be made free?" And so that's another question. Do you want to be made free? Do you want to be made whole from the issues that you are facing or have faced in life? That's another question. Some individuals, because of the pain that they have encountered, have a lot of hostility, bitterness, resentment, and they're unforgiving. They do not want to let go. And so we need to decide, do we want to be made free? But just to give you a little bit of origin on the ACE study, which now has been around for over 25 years. Back in 1985, Dr. Vince Felitti, he is a internal medicine physician in San Diego. He was running this obesity clinic. And in this clinic, he had individuals that come into his clinic that were morbidly obese. I mean, morbidly obese, up to 600, 700 pounds. And in his clinic, he was able to assist these individuals in losing weight rapidly. Some individuals lost, one person lost 300 pounds, believe it or not, in a year. That was not the norm, but one individual did. But he was highly successful in getting these individuals to lose weight. Well, as they were losing weight successfully, he noticed that many of those individuals started to regain the weight, and he could not understand. Um, you've worked really hard, you've taken off all of this weight, and why in the world would you start to regain the weight? That was the question. It was not just one person. It was over and over. It was repeated. Repeatedly, many of these individuals started to regain the weight. And so one by one, he called these individuals into his office and he interviewed them. What's going on? Why are you regaining the weight? And there was a common trend. And that trend that he was able to discover is that many of the individuals suffered traumatic events early in life. And so he thought, I'm consistently finding this and I don't want to be biased. So he enlisted some of his colleagues to do questions, to interview individuals to see if they were finding the same results. And repeatedly, over and over, it went back to childhood trauma. So with this, he devised a questionnaire that was based on three different categories: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. Under the category of abuse, physical abuse, a child that has been violently shaken, slapped, burned, those type of abuses. Emotional abuse, individuals who were called stupid and dumb and you can't do anything right. And sexual abuse, all under the category of abuse. Then the second category was neglect, emotional neglect, okay, and physical neglect. Physical neglect, not being provided with shelter, with clothing, with food, access to health care and education, and emotional neglect, which is different from physical neglect, emotional abuse. So the emotional neglect, where a parent is not there to support that child. Well, say for instance, there's a basketball game, if you're into that, and that child wants that parent to be there to support them, and not allowing that child to feel special and loved. So that's emotional neglect. And then there's the category of household dysfunction, where there is an individual in the home with substance abuse, also a mother that is being abuse, domestic abuse, being beaten by her spouse. Also, an individual that has been in prison, someone in the home that's has been imprisoned. Um, so those are three of those categories under household dysfunction. Also, there can be in that home individuals with mental health disorders. If a mother or a father in the home is going through emotional issues, that affects the child. So when we put these three categories together, when Dr. Folletti put these three categories together, and he asked these questions, he found that the more adverse experiences that a child has. Let's say if a child has physical abuse and then that child is emotionally neglected. Okay, so those are two categories. Um, and let's say that child comes from a home where the mom drinks, the father is doing drugs. Okay, so that would be another point. That's three. Let's say the father was in prison. That would be four. So Dr. Folletti added up the different numbers to come up with what he found to be a high predictor, indicator of disease later in life. And now, fast forward 25 years later, a lot of research is out, and many individuals that have cancer, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, many individuals that have depression, anxiety, and many individuals who are have high numbers of these ACEs, they oftentimes become ill physically. They also have mental issues. They can, and also addictions. Now I know Nick talked about addictions, and think of addictions as far as, okay, someone's on drugs, someone's doing alcohol, but addictions can take a variety of forms. Um, Overeating, that was my go-to. I will tell you a little bit about my background, but at one time I was obese, morbidly obese, weighed up to 210 pounds. At least after 210, I didn't get on the scale anymore. I didn't want to know how much I weighed. But for me, eating was a way to deal with my internal pain. And so, workaholics, someone might say, oh, she has, great work ethics. But the question is, why are you working so hard? Are you trying to prove yourself? Are you trying to please someone? Many individuals shopaholics, sexaholics, individuals that are into pornography. Those are types of addictions, gaming, gambling. So there are a variety of addictions that we traditionally, don't associate with addiction. But why the addiction? What is it? Why do we behave or get involved in behaviors? Why do we get in behaviors that are counterproductive? If you are drinking, there's a problem that can lead to physical disease. It can lead to cirrhosis of the liver. Okay, for one. You overeat, it can lead to obesity. Obesity can lead to high cholesterol levels, hypertension. So all of these counterproductive behaviors that we get into can lead to problems. And we know that, but then it's hard to stop. I remember back during the time Reagan was president, his wife, Nancy Reagan, her campaign slogan was, against drugs, and she said, "Just say no." Well, you can say just say no, but it's not easy to stop something that really feels good. So when we behave in certain ways, it has an impact. It's doing something for us, even though we know it isn't good for us. But we can't just stop. And so the research that has come out now about addictions, a lot about these adverse childhood experiences, it affects our brain. Our brain is impacted. And we do things, drug addict, they get a hit of dopamine. You hear about cocaine. Individuals say, the cocaine just gives them such this feeling, a feeling of ecstasy. Well, cocaine spikes dopamine levels over 10 times. We have all of these neurotransmitters in our brain, but dopamine is the one that makes us really feel good. And we need dopamine. We all need dopamine just to engage in life. Dopamine is what causes us to want to procreate. Individuals, it's a good feeling, when a couple comes together and they're under God's will and they're engaging in sexual activities, they have a release of dopamine. It spikes. Okay. We have a spike in dopamine when we think about eating, food. You know, we eat because, it feels good, it tastes good. And if we did not have that dopamine, we wouldn't eat. So we need dopamine. Many individuals that have had adverse childhood experiences early in life, they have low dopamine levels. They did not, many times the brain did not wire the way it should have because of the stress that occurred early in life. So we get into behaviors that augment and help us to feel better. So, what do we do about adverse childhood experience? It's something that happened years ago, and now you're older, you're an adult, and oftentimes, what is done in childhood, there is a quote that Dr. Folletti, there's a quote regarding this. What happens, and I'm not quoting it directly. So basically, it says what happens early in childhood it's like a footprint, and it's concealed, and you do not see the impact of this until 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later. It's dormant, it's there, and it's waiting to surface under the right circumstances. Now, does everyone who um, have had a traumatic experience, develop disease, mental disease, physical disease, or addictions? No, not everyone. There are factors that can help mitigate the impact of childhood experiences. You can have a traumatic event, but if you have one person, just one person in the household, or a neighbor or relative that makes you feel loved and cared for, that can mitigate the impact of childhood experiences and decrease the probability of having disease later in life. I think it's very interesting when we look at heart disease as the number one killer in the United States. The number one killer, heart disease. Nearly 600,000 individuals are suffering from some form of heart disease. Could it be that the reason we have such a high incident of this disease is because of traumatic experiences early in life? The research shows that 1 in 5 individuals have experienced some type of abuse early in life. There is a high incident of women that have been sexually abused. In fact, the research recently came out in 2019. The CDC said that 5 in 10 of the most common diseases that we suffer with, it's due to early trauma, early in life. So God has a plan for us. He wants to make us whole. And He says that He will heal us of all of our diseases. And so, what Made Whole does is we talk with individuals, we give them a test, look at their ACE score, look at their personality traits, take a history of early events in life, And we bring them into the office, and we're able to systematically go through events. And it is God who is the healer. You know, He says that He's the mighty counselor, He's the Prince of Peace, and He heals all of our diseases. What is interesting is there is a quote from Ellen G. White, and she says that 9/10 of disease starts within the home. She said it's like a canker. You know, some household dysfunction is like a canker eating the soul of individuals. And so we have to look at what's going on in our homes and making sure that we are in alignment. The most important thing that a child needs is love, security. You know, we live now in such a busy society that we don't have the time to just take and be out in nature and talking with our children, interacting, feeling, you know, finding out their needs, their concerns. You know, when children are not given that special attention, they go elsewhere, and oftentimes it's to their peers. And peer to peer, if it is not based on biblical, those relationships are not based on biblical principles, you know, what are our children learning? So I will leave you with this thought, and that is Christ wants to make us whole from all of our diseases. And it doesn't matter what type of issues you have faced in the past. We know that when we know the truth in Jesus, when we know the truth in our backgrounds, when we are ready and transparent to talk about our issues, Christ is there to help us and to set us free. And with that, I will turn it over to Grace and Nick.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate Darlene's insights, because what the root of the healing method is that God comes and transforms our minds, transforms our bodies, and using His ways, putting Him at the forefront of all of our bad habits and our addictions, we can, through His power, through His plants, through His psychology, we can be made whole in our physical realm, our spiritual realm, our mental health realm. I wanted to add that when I went to see the doctor after I went home, and my doctor told me when he saw me, and he couldn't believe it. He was like, I was on crutches by that time, and I had hopped into his room, and he said, "You know, I clearly expected you to be in a wheelchair after hearing this report. You know, it's a miracle. You're a walking miracle." And that's how I can chalk it up to as well. This is a what God ordained, and He can do the miracle in each of us, in all of our various realms, spiritually, physically, mentally, if we ask Him and if we are part of His uh, will, in His will. And I believe that we can, with His grace and power, do that. So, with that, we will go ahead and have a closing prayer. And thank you again for joining us today. Heavenly Father, thank you again for this beautiful time. And we just thank you that you have brought this experience into our lives, in each of our lives, that you can be glorified and that your uh, power can be manifested in all of our whole body. We know that at the end of time, There's only going to be two choices: your method, your healing methods, or the beast systems and the enemy's methods. And we choose your side, we choose your ways, and we thank you and we praise you, and we look forward to when we can thank you personally when you come and take us to our heavenly home. Well, there'll be no more sickness, pain, or death. In the name of the Father, and the Son, the Messiah, Mashiach, I pray. Amen. All right. Thank you. God bless.